So, is Alex O'Connor, is he being overly critical of Wes Huff regarding the Isaiah scroll? And maybe things that Wes Huff might have misspoken when he was on the JRE podcast with Joe Rogan. We're going to take a look at this. I'm resurrecting this conversation because it's been a few months that this all happened and this all unfolded, but I wanted to talk about it because it's very eye-opening. I actually broke it down and was able to analyze the response that Alex O'Connor had to his response video, to somebody else's response video, to what Wes Huff had said. It's been going back and forth for a couple of different ways. Wes Huff made the clarification that he might have misspoke when he was on Rogan's podcast regarding the scroll of Isaiah being word for word identical, and he changes it to, I should have said it is nearly identical. But I'm going to talk about this because I think Alex O'Connor is being a little bit overly critical, and he's getting into the weeds way too much and missing the forest for the leaves. All right, let's take a look at the first clip that we have here. And this is Alex's response to his response video that Wes Huff had that he made a clarification regarding his when he went on Rogan's podcast. So let's just hear what he has to say. And they're talking about, did Wes Huff misspeak? And then can we give a little grace about that?
It's not that he was wrong exactly, but rather just imprecise or hyperbolic.
This was admittedly a hyperbolic statement that I should have been much more careful on. Should I have been more careful in my statement on Rogan about the Great Isaiah Scroll and used much more precise language, something to the effect of nearly identical rather than word for word identical, in order to not bring unnecessary and unfortunate scrutiny upon my discussion with him? Yes, but I hope you can see why I said what I said, and forgive me for my lack of precision.
And to be clear, the problem is obviously not that Wes got this wrong. We all do that, especially in high-pressure, unscripted environments. The problem is with the response.
Is it perfectly understandable that he misremembered something because he was commenting on something that he was not particularly well informed about and was not his specialization, and we should give people grace for that? 100%. I'm totally in line with that. That happens to everybody who is engaged in this kind of public scholarship where we have to try to be generalists. And sometimes we find ourselves commenting on things that we don't know incredibly well. And sometimes we misspeak, sometimes we misremember. That happens. But how you take accountability for it, I think, says an awful lot about what your priorities are and what your ultimate goals are. And I don't think accountability has been adequately taken here. I think the attempt is still to salvage the apologetic goal of reassuring the audience that their dogmas are safe.
But okay.
Okay, so there's a lot there. Did accountability be taken? So Wes, he's an expert in certain ways, but like anybody, if you're an expert about anything, you're not an expert about everything. And just to be like this, we are all still going to mess up in certain ways. We're going to misspeak, but I think it's an overall, what is your motivation? What is driving you to kind of push these views or this information forward? And I think Wes on the Rogan podcast, it seems like it's lax and everything like that. It's kind of easy going, and Joe Rogan, he makes everybody feel comfortable, but it's the biggest podcast in the world. And so he doesn't say everything perfect. He's not perfect. He's not Jesus. So, I mean, I think we can give him a little bit of grace for that. And Alex, I think he's definitely missing the bigger boat on all this, because this whole video, if you go, and I put a link in the description, it's very interesting. But the whole video, he goes into things that Wes said and how they don't exactly line up with the manuscript evidence and all that. But it doesn't change the fact that it's all like 95% completely, nearly identical from what we have. And he doesn't bring up actually one verse or anything. He doesn't like say, this verse says this verse says this. So there's a contradiction here. There's something that it's changing fundamental beliefs. And I think that's the biggest thing, because when we get down to the manuscript evidence, it's the autographs, the autographas, the original writings. Those were completely inspired. Those were 100% inspired. And God has sufficiently preserved the manuscript evidence. He's throughout the centuries, and that we have so much of it because those autographs were inspired, and then everybody wrote a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of. But it's like they weren't just whimsically just writing, what the heck? I'm just going to write over here while I'm watching a TV over here. No, they were, especially the Old Testament, they were very acute. If everything didn't line up perfectly, every letter, they would count the letters. And if it didn't line up perfectly, they would toss it out. They would go and bury it because it had the holy name of God written on it. Because they're not typing it up, and there's backspace. Oh, I messed up a little bit. No, they are being extremely careful in what they are doing and writing it. But it's still, they don't got a printing press. They don't got a printing press in what they're doing. So I think we can just it's pretty dang miraculous that that has been preserved this well. And the Isaiah scroll that got brought up, when the Dead Sea Scrolls and all that, Qumran, when they found that, it just revalidated that what we have is good evidence and strong evidence that the Bible didn't change. It's been the way since Moses. He didn't write the whole Bible, but he wrote the first 5 books. And I know some people disagree with that, but the thing is, when you got to disagree with that and say Moses couldn't have written this, is because you understand that it is inspired scripture. It is something we got to take a serious look at. It's something we can't just skate over and just say, oh, a committee. We have to fabricate this committee, or these editors had to get in there because one man couldn't have wrote this. But the first 5 books are attributed to Moses. Even Jesus said that. But there's many other books in the Bible. But I want to skip forward to another thing that Wes said, and that Alex wanted to kind of critique him on. And when he basically, if we need to reevaluate everything that we look at the Bible, and it doesn't completely, it has to be 100% word for word. In a heated environment, he said word for word. He wasn't thinking straight when he said that, but it's nearly identical. And a lot of the mistakes or the differences is just a matter of spelling. It's a matter of one word being in another place of the sentence. It doesn't fundamentally change the sentence. You can say the same sentence over and over in a different way. You can say the same thing. Ask any politician. They say the same thing over and over, but use different words. They do different inflections. And that's what a lot of the Bible is. It's just different. That's the differences they're finding out. But nothing in this video that Alex talked about brought up any differences of this verse says this. And even if it did, it would just be the different way of saying that same thing. And it doesn't change any fundamental beliefs. It doesn't change any doctrinal issues that we have. But I want to continue this last clip real fast just to see. All right, here we go.
Isn't it still just amazing to find a possibly 92.5% fidelity between the two texts? Remember,
the overwhelming agreement between the Isaiah scroll and the later Masoretic text is shocking, despite orthographic and minor scribal differences.
Isn't it still a wow moment?
Rogan's reaction to the correction of wording should be exactly the same. It is a wow moment.
Isn't it still just amazing and unheard of for an ancient text to be so well preserved?
But here's the thing. There's nothing special about 1Q Isaiah A or any biblical manuscripts in terms of their fidelity or how close they are to later copies of the Old Testament. You could do the same thing with manuscripts of pretty much anything from antiquity. So why are we so shocked and so excited when when biblical manuscripts basically just look like all other ancient manuscripts?
That's why, by the way, it would...
Okay. We're not we don't worship the Bible. We don't worship the Bible. Like any Bible that we have, we obviously know it's not in the same language that it's written. If you have an English Bible, Jesus wasn't speaking, American. He wasn't speaking, good English that the Britons speak, He wasn't speaking that language. He was speaking more than likely Aramaic, and most of the Bible is not in Aramaic. There's like maybe a fraction of it, and not even that was when in the New Testament. It was written in Hebrew and primarily Greek. So it's a translation of his his words, but it's still conveying the thought. The point of the Bible is God used men, people that regular people, but he used them and he orchestrated it. By every word, every letter was being written, inspired and communicated by God. It was being breathed out by God through their writings. And that takes faith. You have to have a little bit of faith to accept that. But anybody these scholars out there, like, and there could be people that believe in all this, and then people that just come at it with a skeptical view. I think either way, you are on one camp or the other. You are coming to the Bible and you are almost settled in your position one way or the other. No reasoning that somebody talks to you is going to just convince you immediately. You're going to be more entrenched and more settled in your position with what you came to the table. Me saying this, I bet I haven't changed one person's viewpoint out there, and more than likely any video you watch is not going to change it. It's just going to just dig you in more to what you already believe. But so when we think of the manuscript evidence that is out there, like, I am not like, if I understand there are places in the Bible, I don't think the end of Mark was actually in the original. I think it was added. But we have so much evidence that of manuscripts that we're able to catch that. We're able to see all of them. We see so many that we can pinpoint. That's why if you look at any Bible, it has like brackets around everything, and you say this word wasn't actually there, this probably didn't say this, but it doesn't ever change any foundational belief. And in this whole video that they go through this, and Alex went through this with Wes, none of it actually went to any verse and said this one said this one said that. It changes any viewpoint that we have about God's nature, about redemption, about salvation, about who Jesus is. Nothing changes. It doesn't it just, for any New Testament scholar out there, there are the places in the New Testament that people can point to and say, we don't know if that meant our or your. We don't know if this definite article was there. And definite articles can definitely be a huge deal, but either way, it doesn't ever fundamentally change anything. It doesn't ever. And if you point to something, it never passes the smell test of being strong evidence to overthrow Christianity. And I know the guy that the last person we saw on there that he was talking to, Alex was talking to, he brings up the only thing that we know is pristinely, perfectly intact from the original that we have is the Quran. And you could say was because everything else was burned and thrown away. They did not allow any other evidence or any other manuscript to survive. The thing about the Bible is we have a plethora of manuscripts to choose from and look at and be able to get down to what was the original author's writing. So I just would love to hear what Alex would say about the specifics, because he didn't bring up one verse. He didn't say this one said this. He says there's differences in all these manuscripts, but he did come to the conclusion that it's 95% the same. So you could say that's the nearly identical, that maybe Wes didn't say it whenever he was on JRE, the podcast with Rogan. But either way, it doesn't change anything. It's no fundamental belief of Christianity has been altered. So I think Alex is being definitely overly critical when he's doing this, and it's probably to get a reaction out of Wes, probably to see how much maybe he can heat him up so that they can have a conversation, because I want to see that. I want to see Alex and Wes talk this through. That would be amazing. And I think Wes is kind of holding off on that. He doesn't want to debate anyone. He doesn't want to debate, All right. If you've enjoyed this video, hit this link, and I will see y'all on the other side.
I could see the cracks falling